Oh, another beautiful day. Hello and welcome to Waffle-Free Storytelling. It's Tina Konstant here, and all the jibber jabber, as usual, is at the end. So we're jumping right into today's story, which is called The Bee, the Wind, and the Impossible. Now, you see, there were 3 very well-dressed bees who flew from flower to flower, doing all the busy and important things of the day. The clouds, in the meantime, loomed dark and heavy, and the breeze was almost a wind. But the task was clear in their minds. Pollen! The 3rd bee boomed as they flew from bud to bud. Find it, collect it, return to the hive, and be the bee. That was their mission. Well, one more bee came late to that mission. This one flipped and flapped and buzzed and twirled. She flew from flower to flower and blade to blade. She hovered on the wind and spun and swirled in all the flecks of the sun that made it through the clouds. The bee hummed and played and caught flecks of pollen that the wind had picked up and tossed about like it didn't care or even know the value of the stuff. Every piece of pollen blown up by the wind that little bee caught and put in her bag. The 3 big bees ignored this fool and cursed the wind for hampering their flight, slowing them down, throwing them off course, and blowing their precious pollen out of the buds. These were serious bees doing serious work, which had serious consequences if it wasn't done right. No pollen meant no honey, which meant no hive, which meant an unhappy queen, and no one wanted the queen to be unhappy. But no matter how much these 3 big bees berated the 4th little bee, she refused to fly in a straight line or search for pollen in all the right places. So after a time, big bees number 1, 2, and 3 ignored her and did their duty all solemn and serious and according to the manual. But the rains had been heavy in the last weeks, and the winds had been wild, and all the usual pollen pods were empty. Plan A is a bust, the chief bee said, cursing a gust of wind that blew him off course. We move to Plan B, which is return to all of the pollen pods and search them again. Well, this 4th little bee didn't hear the new command, so she stuck to the lesson that she had heard around the honey pots her whole life. Just fill your bag with pollen, her grandmother had always said. It doesn't really matter how. So, with that in mind, the little bee ducked and dove and wove and played in the wind. Where she swooped, the wind gushed. When she swirled, the wind rushed, and with every gush and rush, the wind tossed up puffs of pollen like a kid kicking up sand on a beach. Instead of flying away, the little bee flew into the clouds of swirling pollen and caught it on her head and her legs and her back and her wings, and she stuffed every bead of that rich beauty into her bag, and she laughed as the wind tried to unbalance her again with another blast of pollen in the face. After the best game of catch and tag with the wind, the little bee, heavy with pollen, returned home. When she got back to the hive, big bees, number 1, 2, and 3, were standing there with empty sacks, explaining to the queen how the terrible weather had made their job impossible. There was nothing in the flowers, they said. It had all been stripped clean. Well, full and heavy, weighed down with sticky pollen, the 4th little bee landed with a clunk. And you? The queen said. How did you find so much when these 3 could find nothing? The The little bee dropped the pollen she had carried and stared wide-eyed at the 3 big, smartly turned out and hugely annoyed bees. Then she turned to the queen. "It wasn't just me," the little bee said. "The wind offered to help." There's a tiny little crazy summer story for you. As we speak, I happen to have eggs boiling on the stove for breakfast, and I have a feeling they are probably ready to pop, so I'd better go. Have a spectacular day. Drop around to www.tinakonstant.com for all the Waffle-Free stories. Waffle-Free for kids, the Hoof McGraws are back on their wild adventures. So, oh my heavens, join in. Join the fireside. I would love to see you there. And be happy. Just enjoy what the wind blows in your face. Have a good one, folks. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye now.